If a man kills a fellow Jew unintentionally, he's a shogeg killer, and he's forced to go into exile to the Ir HaMiklat. He remains in that city of exile until the Kohen Gadol dies. Upon the death of the Kohen Gadol, then he's allowed to go back to his home. The Mishnah in Makos tells us, for this reason, the mothers of the Kohanim would bring food, would bring clothing to the Ir HaMiklat. The mother of the Kohen Gadol realized that this shogeg killer might daven. He might ask Hashem for rachamim. He might ask Hashem to allow him to be redeemed from this exile. The only way that he could be redeemed would be if the Kohen Gadol died. Because the mother of the Kohen was afraid that the shogeg killer might daven for the death of her son, therefore the mother of the Kohen Gadol would show up with food, with clothing, so that there be favor in the eyes of the shogeg killer, thereby he would not daven. This Mishnah is rather difficult to understand, because what it clearly implies is that had the mother of the Kohen Gadol not found favor in this killer's eye, the killer might have davened, he might have prayed to Hashem, and the Kohen Gadol might have died. That sounds rather difficult to understand. The Kohen Gadol is a tzaddik. This rotseach, this killer, albeit unintentionally, is not a tzaddik by any sense or any measure. In fact, he's in exile for what's considered a wicked action. How is it possible that if he would pray, it would end up that the Kohen Gadol might die? It sounds rather difficult to understand. And the answer to this question is based on understanding the upper world system of nature that Hashem created. In the physical world, there are immutable laws of nature. Gases tend to expand, heat tends to rise, heavy objects tend to fall. These are laws that are universal, that apply throughout the cosmos. If you leave a baby on a changing table, Rahman al-San, and the baby falls off, you don't call gravity cruel or indifferent. It's a reality. These are mechanisms, rules that govern all of nature. As in the lower world, so too in the upper world, Hashem created various rules that govern the upper worlds. The Gemara tells us when Hashem thought to create the world, if it could be, Hashem wanted to create the world with Midas Hadin. Midas Hadin means the measure of justice, of judgment. Judgment says that you are accountable, you are responsible for what you do. Midas Hadin, the measure of strict justice, is that anything that a human being does, he's held 100% responsible for. However, if it could be, Hashem saw that the world could not exist. No matter how great a person is, no matter how righteous, every human being slips, every human being makes mistakes, and therefore Hashem mitigated the Midas Hadin with Midas HaRachamim. Rachamim, mercy, is introduced into the equation, so that the same action that the person did is now weighed, is now measured with a different system. Rachamim says you have to understand his background, you have to understand where he's coming from, take into account maybe he didn't realize the gravity of what he was doing. Rachamim introduces a whole different system into the equation. Din is strict justice. Rachamim is introduced into the equation to mitigate the strict justice. However, both remain in functioning, both govern the laws of nature. If Din is on this side and Rachamim is on this side, Hashem, so to speak, brings the slide rule somewhere in the middle. Throughout the year, let's assume the slide rule is 50-50, 50% Din, 50% Rachamim. At certain times of the year, that slide rule is moved over more towards Rachamim. On Yom Kippur, we know that things are judged differently. There are various things that a person can do to move that slide rule over. To understand the concept of davening for another person, this concept helps us understand it. How is it possible that if a kehila gathers together to daven for a sick woman, that anything's going to change? The woman doesn't change. She might be unconscious. She may not even be aware of your prayers. The answer is the woman doesn't change, nor do her actions change, but potentially the system of judgment changes. You see, we ask Hashem for mercy, move the slide rule over from Din to Rachamim. If it was 50-50 before, move it over, introduce a little bit more mercy, judge a little bit more favorably. The woman doesn't change, her actions don't change, but the system of judgment changes. And once that happens, then a woman who might have been guilty previously for whatever she had done might now be found innocent. And this system explains to us much of how the world works, and I believe that's exactly the answer for this Mishnah. You see, if this Rotseach, if the Shogeg killer were to daven for mercy, Hashem, please let me go free, Hashem, please, please, he would introduce mercy upon himself. But the only way that he could be judged more favorably, the only way he could be let free, is if the Kohen Gadol were to leave this earth. But the Kohen Gadol is an innocent man. However, the Kohen Gadol is an innocent man only if that slide rule is 50-50. If that slide rule in judging the Kohen were moved over more to din, if a more exacting standard were used to measure the Kohen Gadol, then in fact he might be guilty. No matter how great a human being is, he sinned somewhere along the line, he did something wrong, and it could well be that the prayers of the shogeg killer would move the Kohen Gadol system over to more din, would introduce more strict judgment, and for that reason the mothers of the Kohen Gadol would come to the Rotzeach and introduce this element of favor so that the person, the Rotzeach, wouldn't pray for the death of the Kohen Gadol. And this concept is very, very profound and helps us understand much of the way Hashem judges the world. The reality is that we are judged and we are held accountable. Much of our tefillah, much of our requests, much of our prayers to ask Hashem, please judge us more favorably. We can't undo justice, we can't claim total abdication of responsibility, but we beg Hashem, judge us more favorably, introduce more rachamim, and ultimately that could change the decree, that could change the entire outcome of the result.